Hi there, it's Richard Anson here. I'm on my way to see Lopo Champalimaud. He's the CEO and founder of the online beauty booking business Treatwell. I understand they've had explosive growth over the past few years, and I want to talk to him about that, but also about what it was like in the early days, what business models he explored, and the challenges he faced digitizing an industry that's not known for its tech savviness. Lopo, great. Thank you for making the time. It's great to come to your quite cool offices as well. So just I guess for our listeners as an intro with Treatwell, can you maybe talk a little bit about your background and how you came up with the idea for Treatwell?
Sure. Thanks for having me, first of all.
Yeah.
So Treatwell is a company that I started in 2008.
Okay.
Here in London. And I've been in the tech space and been an entrepreneur in the tech space since actually 1994. I did my first startup actually was the world's first online market research firm.
In 1994?
1994.
Wow.
So
I was going to say that must be almost pre-web.
It was pre-web. So when we started off, what we had was the exclusive right to do market research on AOL.
Okay.
And AOL was it, right? And we had a panel of people we could do focus groups with, and we could do surveys with and stuff. Yeah. And no one could figure out why you'd want to do research with these guys, because everyone assumed they were just geeks living with their mothers in the basement, you know. And we thought it was a really interesting way of we thought it could really transform the way you collected data and research, and of course we never understood how much the world was going to change. And of course, but a year later, the browser was created and the web changed everything, and suddenly it moved from being an AOL business to being an internet business. But so I'd been in the internet space for a long time, and then eventually I moved here in 2000. I started that business in New York, and I moved here in 2001, and I to create a business here.
Here being London.
London, moved to London in 2001. Yeah. And to run one of those, the businesses had developed into a second business. Yeah. And which was a CRM business. Okay. Kind of what today we call big data business. Yeah. And then in 2008 I left, and I was looking, or 2007 I left, and I take that back. In 2004 I left, and I was kind of figuring out what I was going to do next. Yeah. And I'd had kind of a modest success. It was been very modest in kind of in terms of these startups, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I wasn't sure if maybe I was a good entrepreneur or not. Yeah. And Brent Hoberman called me up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to figure out what my next step is." He said, "Well, come work with me at lastminute.com."
Okay. And that's where we first met.
And that's how we first met.
Okay.
So I was at lastminute.com from 2004 to 2008, and I ran the lifestyle business there. Yeah. And during that time, I was kind of really interested in local businesses and local services, because I felt like that had been something that had been undeveloped online. Yeah. And so I was very interested in that particular category, and I was very interested in marketplaces and how marketplaces developed. And I was particularly curious as to why certain marketplaces were really good and certain marketplaces didn't work. And so, for instance, I was perplexed as to why the hotel marketplace business was very good in Europe and not very good in the US. And I kind of came to understand that the issue there was that you have massive fragmentation in the European market, which makes it a very good market for an intermediary. Yeah. And you have very little fragmentation in the US market, so about 80% chain owned in America, 80% independently owned in Europe, and that makes it a poor business in Europe. They're
going to block you. Yeah.
And they're going to block you. So I said that was a real kind of aha moment. And so I was actually looking for a large marketplace in the local space that hadn't been developed yet, which was fragmented. And at around that same time, I was we'd had a successful exit with lastminute.com, and I was kind of trying to think about the next thing. And at that time, I was also one night, I was working late, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, walking home, and I was trying to book a massage for the weekend, right? Okay. And I couldn't, right? And this is really
You're trying to do that online, were you? Or
on my BlackBerry, right? Because like a bad little experience, and there's no website to go to, and you send an email. So I sent an email, and I didn't get a response from my email. And so the next day I'd forgotten to call the place back, and then eventually I get in touch with them a day later, and this is like a start. This whole episode starts on like a Tuesday for a Saturday appointment, And by the time I'm now on Thursday, and I found out that the place doesn't have availability, so now I'm trying to find a new place to go to, and the whole thing just a really, bad experience. And
by that size, you really need a massage.
Yeah, by the time you really need it.
Yeah.
Well, the truth of the matter, I never had that massage.
Okay.
Right, because by the time I got to the end, it was just too much trouble, and I kind of thought to myself, wow, that was money that was not spent in that particular industry as a result. And so it got me thinking a lot about the whole space, local services, and we started with massage, but then thought more broadly about hair and beauty services in general. And as I did my research, I realized it was a very large, very fragmented market. We think it's about 100 billion. The services market, we think it's about 100 billion euros across Europe.
100 billion across Europe.
Yeah,
so huge.
Alone. Huge market. It's 95% single owner operated.
Yeah.
It's about 2% online. These are businesses that really have no way of really marketing themselves. The consumer has a really bad experience in buying it. They can't find. It's hard to shop. It's hard to find availability. It's hard to. You can't compare availability, price, reviews, an area you know very well. So all these different factors are really, really hard to figure out. And so the shopping experience is very poor. You can't book outside of certain times of the day.
Yeah.
And so the businesses need help because they can't market themselves. And if you look at the average spa and salon, they run it around the 30% utilization rate.
30.
So
it doesn't surprise me. I bought a voucher for my wife recently, and it was an appalling experience just trying to even buy the voucher, actually.
Well, there you go. Well, you should have bought it through.
I should have done.
But the experience is and that's part of the problem, right? And so they have a really low utilization rate, and so we kind of thought, well, this is really interesting, and so how do we begin to transform this industry and use what we've learned, the lessons from other verticals, and apply them to this one.
And so how did you, you've identified a massive market, and you've identified that actually none of them are online or very untech savvy, for want of a better word. What business models did you explore in the early days? Because obviously, if you build a platform, they can't plug into it, etc. So that must have been did you have to go around each one and do how did you?
It's actually a really, really good question, because so the very first page of the first business plan said open table for spas and salons. Yeah. Really straightforward. And I was about 3 or 4 months into this plan, and I realized that I think that the market was far less developed than I even imagined. Yeah. And the original idea was we were going to build software and give the software to the salons, and we were going to be able to let them do bookings through the platform, etc.
But they need an internet connection in the salon. Presumably they probably didn't have it.
And I realized these guys are so far behind from a technology curve that this is going to be too hard. And so we pivoted. The first pivot we made was we pivoted towards going what I call the media model. So we basically said, okay, instead of trying to do a transaction, what we'll do is just do a listing fee. Okay. Right. So salons come on board. They'll pay us a listing fee to be on the site. We will send them leads effectively, and they will convert the leads, and that's it. We won't take a commission. We'll just have a flat fee.
Was a lead just click to call in those days?
It wasn't even a click to call. It was just a flat monthly fee. Okay. Right? And that was it. And it was a fairly. You got to also remember at the time in 2008. Everything about e-commerce was, no VC was touching e-commerce. E-commerce was considered very dirty, and everyone was thinking about meta search. They were thinking about the hottest, the play on local was Yelp, which wasn't transactional.
And Lehman Brothers had just gone bust then, presumably.
And Lehman Brothers had just gone bust, and no one was going to have a haircut again their entire life. So it was a kind of an unusual time, and so we tried this, and what we realized very quickly was that the problem with that model was that even though we were generating leads, that no one ever gave us the credit for the leads. And so, some people made good use of it, and for them, they would be happy to pay us the 30, 40 pounds a month, whatever it was. For those who didn't, it was really, really hard.
So you got no way of attributing the increase
exactly, right? Okay. And you get and also the other problem we had was the customer experience, what hadn't been solved. So going back to the example of me trying to book a massage, I still was sending out an email and hoping for someone to respond the other end, and half the time they didn't respond, right? And so I said, well, that's not going to work either. And so we were starting to think about the pivot, and right around that time, I saw in the U.S. this new model developing, which was the daily deal model.
Yeah.
And I looked at
That's kind of the Groupon model.
That was Groupon,
yeah.
right? And then Groupon was showing up, and suddenly I was looking at the Groupon data, and Groupon was 50% of what they were selling was hair and beauty, and this thing was growing like wildfire. And I said, well, I'm supposed to be the expert in hair and beauty. I can't seed this ground.
Sure.
So what are we going to do?
So this is your second pivot now.
This is our second pivot, right?
Yeah.
This is our second pivot.
Yeah.
And so we launched a daily deal model.
Okay.
And now we launched it. We ended up being the first to launch this particular daily deals in the UK, but we only did hair and beauty. Right? We didn't do any other vertical. So no.
Just London or across the UK?
Across the UK.
Okay.
And what we did though is we focused on, but we always felt like it was an addition to what our core business was. So in the background, we started building this booking engine.
Okay.
Right?
So you were kind of building two businesses at once?
Yeah, well, I didn't see them as two businesses.
No,
I thought they were extensions of the same thing. So I thought, well, okay.
How many people were you at that stage?
Maybe 20 people or so.
Okay.
Right? So it's a relatively small team.
Yeah.
And we thought these things sat perfectly side by side, because we thought that a salon, every day they want a booking, but maybe on some days they want to promote themselves and get extra boost, right? And that was the Daily Deal platform. And so we launched Daily Deals, and the first thing happened is Daily Deals just took off, right? And before I knew it, 80% of my business was a Daily Deal business.
Kind of fantastic in one way. Yeah.
Fantastic one, except I didn't like it, right? I didn't like it because the problem with Daily Deals was it didn't solve my consumer problem, right? Which is that if you need a haircut, a daily deal is an impulse purchase, and so if you need a haircut, the idea that you sit there waiting for an email to show up, which happens to have the salon that you want to go to, and then you got a voucher to book yourself in 6 months later, like your wife probably had this horrible experience on, is just not the way people are going to book hair and beauty services.
And I guess it gives us the salon a big spike as well.
Yes.
Instead of spreading out their load or their
well, that is the other problem. Is it actually doesn't solve. So salons have a utilization problem. Yeah. And the problem with daily deals is it's actually a bit of a sledgehammer to how to deal with availability and yield. Yeah. And what the salon wants is to actually pinpoint the demand to very specific services, specific stylists or providers of the service, and at particular times of the week and day. Got it. And so, what was happening with daily deals, someone buys a voucher for a £60 massage, which is now £20, and what the consumer is doing is they're booking themselves into the prime slots, the exact time that the salon doesn't want the help for.
So bumping others out.
Correct.
Essentially.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the salon only has two options, right? They either lie and say I'm fully booked, right? Or the consumer's not stupid, so they kind of hang up the phone and call back without the voucher and say, well, how come suddenly they get availability? So now everyone's pissed off in this experience. So it wasn't solving that problem. And so But
your business was growing hugely on the back of it.
But the business was growing hugely. And then it started to plateau, right? Because it became, but as everyone knows, that daily deal thing became just so overhyped, and so quite frankly, everybody had a deal. There was so many of these businesses.
Yeah, everyone was piling in. Yeah.
And so what happened was there was promiscuity in both consumers and suppliers. Yeah. There was no loyalty, right? So you'd see the supplier would run a deal with you one day, say, totally exclusive, and the next day run it someone else.
Got it.
And then you would have, and then the consumer couldn't care less who they bought it from. Yeah. So it was just the economics started falling apart. And so I remembered in 2012, I turned to my board and I said, listen, I think that this daily deal thing, the economics don't make sense anymore. Yeah. I think we should focus on this core business that's been growing very well underneath this whole thing.
And so at that point, you're effectively telling your board the business that you spent building for 2 years is we should focus elsewhere.
We should focus elsewhere.
Interesting conversation.
Yeah. Well, the board, to be fair, I never had sold the business as a daily deal business. Got it. And my investors had never wanted to own a daily deal business. Okay. They all understood the daily deals was a stepping stone or potentially a building block towards the ultimate vision, which was this open table for spas and salons. Yeah. What they didn't expect, and what I quite frankly didn't expect when we built this business, when we made this decision, was that within 6 months, we'd actually turned off our daily deal business.
What, completely?
Completely. right? So I thought we were.
Wow.
I thought all we were going to do was just stop investing in it
and manage the decline,
or just actually flatline it, right? And that was the original plan. But what I discovered was that if the question is, if you take a sales team and you tell the sales team to go out and instead of getting a daily deal when they're sitting in front of a salon, instead of getting a daily deal, please sign up the salon so that they can take bookings every single day, right? Well, it turns out the answer to how long it takes to kill a daily deal business is 6 months, because
they've got an either-or choice, haven't they?
Well, I didn't want them to get a daily deal, right? So and you can't sell two things at once, right? And so 6 months later, I had no more daily deals to sell, and it was
how was the booking business at that stage? Was that still kind of quite very early stage?
It was still very, very early stage, and
wow.
we now built a software, and was early days.
Stressful time.
Super stressful. That year was probably the most stressful time of year for many dimensions. One is we turned off basically 80% of our business.
Yeah.
The second thing was we basically changed the entire team. So during that year, I had my head of sales, my CFO, my head of marketing, my head of operations, my CTO, everybody left and transitioned for all different reasons.
Sure.
Sometimes they were just tired. Sometimes they had other opportunities. Sometimes it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Right? But the result was an entire transformation of the team.
It's quite brutal on you, actually.
It was probably one of the toughest years of my career.
You have quite a good support network around you, like kind of other CEOs or mentors.
As you know, as an entrepreneur, I think it's lonely at the best of times. And even with the best support in the world, those are very lonely
pretty
moments.
lonely
those
moments.
Are lonely moments.
Absolutely.
And I did have very good people around me, but during that time, even the most supportive investor, of which we had very supportive investors, you're testing their faith,
their resolve,
and their resolve. And there was a couple of very difficult moments. So fortunately, a couple things happened during this is 2000. So this is 2012, and
4 years in.
4 years in, basically. And two things happened. First is our appointment booking, what I call appointment bookings, a real-time booking business, just took off. Right, it really, really, really took off, and it took off fast enough that I could basically keep it's offset the decline of the daily deals. So, but for a year we basically flatlined, which is never very good. No. But you could see there was something else.
So you got the hope coming, starting to appear. Okay.
Yes. Although people were suspicious at that moment, right? Yeah. And the second thing that happened is I happened to have been able to. I don't know why they believe me, but there's a couple of amazing people who are still part of my team who agreed to join and become part of the journey, who saw that growth curve and said, I see what you're trying to do. Yeah. I really believe in this business. I want to do it with you. And those people was three people. There's a bunch of people, with three people in particular. Yeah. It was Simon Lambert, who was our CTO, who I'd worked with at lastminute.com and then was the CTO at moo.com. There was Chris Wood, who had been the MD at Top Table, and who actually was kind of so he understood the space super well. And there was Klaus Nyengard, who was the CEO at Just Eat, who became our chairman. Right. And so kind of the four of us really kind of regrouped, and based on that team, we were able to build out, and it hadn't looked back since.
That's kind of full credit to you, because it's kind of the sheer, I guess, it's the unwritten part of the entrepreneurial journey, isn't it? Where it's kind of your sheer will of passion and force, really, of kind of persuasion, really, of bringing a core group with you.
There's persuasion, but there's also, I think what it is also you realize as an entrepreneur, you're only as good as the people around you, I think. And I think you need a group of people who really who believe in you, believe in the business, but also have the right attitude. So Simon is my favorite story here. I mean, so Chris was actually a CEO somewhere else. Yep. And he didn't quite feel it was the right thing for him. And I said to him, I said, listen, there's no CEO job. He says,
he's chairman now. Yeah.
No. Chris is our chief commercial officer. Okay. Yeah. And so he now runs our UK business, which is our single biggest business. And he's like, no, I understand. I'm actually really happy to be part of this team. So that was a sacrifice from his job. But the biggest sacrifice I thought, and the most telling thing was Simon, who's our CTO. And I remember, so Moo's been a fantastically successful business.
Yeah.
He'd done an incredible job there. There wasn't a company in London who didn't want to hire him as CTO. And I remember inviting him for dinner about 3 weeks before he started. And so he's at my house, we're having dinner, having a really nice time, and I wait for dessert to kind of talk about this. And we say, listen, there's just one thing, I'm really excited you started. Yes. He's like, I'm super excited, this is gonna be really great. And I said, okay, now there's one thing you should know, which is that we run out of money in 3 weeks' time. And
he's on board by this stage.
He's on board. He's ready to quit. He's kind of, he's
yeah.
going to start. I'm like,
I recognize those conversations. Yeah.
And he's like, okay. And he takes, big sip of wine. He says, okay. So what does that mean? What are you saying? I said, well, I think it's going to be okay. I'm pretty sure I can get the money, but I just don't want to lie to you, and have false expectations when you join. And he says, well, if you want, I can delay my start. And I thought to myself, and I almost said yes, and then I hesitated and said, no, actually that's a terrible idea, because you just know that it would just never happen, right?
Exactly. You're going to the never zone.
Yeah, and I said, no, let's just go ahead. And he, to his credit, said, so I had really no idea how I was going to pay him. He had no idea what was actually going to happen. He took a huge risk, but to his credit, he joined, and we figured it out.
Yeah.
And
great story.
And so it was that, and I thought, wow, that's the kind of people you really you need around you at those moments.
Yeah, great story. Yeah. And how did you grow the kind of consumer side and as you started to build out the booking platforms? That's your third pivot. How did you grow the I guess bringing on the salons and also then bringing on the consumers? Which came first as the kind of chicken or egg, really?
That's a really good idea. Question. So that was actually one of the big things we figured out in 2012. So we were sitting there, and we launched this software. We'd actually bought a software company that produced software for spas and salons.
Okay. And specifically, that's what they did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we kind of embedded. We rebuilt the whole platform, integrated into our marketplace business.
So you bought a business when, I guess, your business was in a point of flux too, without a huge amount of cash, and
it was crazier.
Yeah.
We actually bought a business. It was a 4-person team in Lithuania.
Okay.
Okay. I'd never been to Lithuania.
Yeah.
I had never done an acquisition outside of the UK. I was like, this is. And the board said, okay, it wasn't a lot of money, and actually the team is still with us, actually, which is amazing.
Wow.
And,
great.
And it was a really amazing. It turned out to be an amazing deal, and for everybody. But it was super high risk, and the board let me do it, and we integrated this platform, and so we had this thing, and we were going, and it was clear to me, like, the thing that kept guiding me all the way through was I kept saying, well, all I know is you can't, in the future, 10 years time from now, there's no way that people are going to be booking their hair appointments by picking up the phone with somebody at the other end of the line, writing it down with a pencil and piece of paper. It's just, that can't be the future. And so I knew that the transformation had to happen. Yeah. And that's why I really believed in this real-time booking engine. But we launched it, and actually, we took our best salons in London, and we added the availability. They made it bookable.
And did you focus on as you were starting to roll out, on a region within London and say, right, we want to get it working in SW, whatever? And
we started in London, right?
Okay.
And we didn't learn enough about this. We started in London, and the first thing that happened, we got no bookings.
Yeah.
And I suddenly thought, my God, I've kind of put, all my chips on black, and it turns out like maybe this isn't going to work.
So salons had accepted the booking engine, and you got that working, and you had
couldn't get any availability.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get any bookings, and I discovered that it was because they were limiting their availability to us. And once we unblocked that, right? Yeah. So what they were doing was,
so they didn't trust you enough at that stage.
Correct. Okay. So what they were doing at that stage, they were telling us, telling us we want bookings only at this times. And they were being very specific. So I want Wednesday afternoons on this service and this time. And we said, let's turn this around. Why don't we just let us book whenever you're free, and then we can work on this. And that immediately opened it up. And we started understanding that the more availability we created, and the more salons we created, the more the customers came, and the more orders we delivered. Okay. And then we learned.
How did the customers find you at that point? Well, because you're a Wahanda at that stage.
We're Wahanda at this stage, and we have we had the good thing is we had a bunch of SEO traffic. We had we had an email database. We had something to build around.
Did you have a Because the reason I ask is kind of loads of startups, they kind of, when they get to that point of actually how do we get customers to site, it tends to be the kind of crunch point or fall over. Is that something you naturally did yourself, or did you hire excellent marketers around you in the early?
we had a marketing team. So what we discovered, and this is actually, but we actually made a different decision. We actually sat down and we sat down with the senior team early in this process, and we said, okay, money no object.
Yeah.
How do you grow this marketplace? And everyone started the conversation by saying, we do a big, huge marketing campaign, right? We've got to tell the world about this.
Yeah.
And within about 30 seconds, everyone had turned around because they realized actually the problem is if you do a big marketing campaign, you get a bunch of traffic, they're not going to find the salons and the services they want, so therefore it's not going to get convert, and therefore actually what we have to do is focus on supply, right?
Okay.
And so we made this series of decisions on at every single moment that we had. We've always made a decision of focusing on supply.
Okay.
And so up until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had 50 people in supply, right, and both acquiring and managing supply, but we had 2 people in marketing.
Wow! So that bigger,
decision,
okay,
that
really
big.
big.
So we really believe that the key to this driving this marketplace was a supply driven.
And did you think of it on a geography basis, right? If we're going to enter this area or this market, we've got to have 60% or 70% of the salons.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the way it works, so that was actually the next piece of transformation. When then we then figured out, well, actually, if you're going to be good at this, you actually have to be super specific about it. And so it's a hyper local market. And unlike food delivery, food delivery is a hyper local market, but the food comes to you. Yeah. So there's a lot of room for fudging.
Absolutely.
Right. In our case, someone walks out of this office and says they want a manicure, they're not walking more than 5 minutes. Yeah. So you have to have a choice of manicures. So we actually look at it on a postcode by postcode area.
Okay.
We can tell you what our coverage rate is across our 6 different major treatment areas.
Got it.
And we can tell you exactly what our coverage rate and penetration rate and all the rest.
Because that gives the consumer confidence and choice.
Yes. Yeah. Which is also what makes our business so hard. Yeah. Right? Because fundamentally, in order to create the consumer proposition to make it really good, you need such density of supply that actually is a huge challenge for.
Yeah, you've got to have feet on the street, basically going around to all the salons and saying,
and you need this constant chicken and egg problem, right? And which we solve more by adding supply, but you need the supply in order to make the demand work, but you need a lot of supply.
Got it. Yeah. And now you've got the supply. How do you think about marketing now? Because I see you all over the tube. You rebranded to Treatwell. Maybe we should talk about the rebrand. But how do you think about advertising now and reaching consumers?
So I think what started off being like a 90% of our resources, especially in the early days when we had very finite resources, we put every incremental pound we put to supply. So we were 90% focused on supply. And that balance, that's come more and more balanced. So today I would argue it's probably more like 50-50.
Right, okay.
But I don't think the supply problem's over, right?
Interesting. And when you were the 90% on supply, was the volume of, I guess, consumers or the traffic, etc., was that just sort of slowly growing via SEO, etc., and a bit of social in there?
And repeats and word of mouth and PR and social and performance marketing, right? There was also some and all the rest. So we were investing. There's no question. But if you think about it from a headcount perspective, it was a very
that's really insightful.
And we just believed that, and we could see it, right? Look at our conversion rate. Like, so what's the biggest factor that drives in conversion improvement? Well, if someone can't find what they're looking for, you're just not going to get the conversion, right? And that was fundamentally
if the customer experience fails, they're not coming back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we were very, very focused on that angle. Today it's much more balanced, and we advertise, and we're significant marketers. Both. So as you said, we advertise on the tube, on buses. We do a lot online. Still, the majority of our investment it happens online.
Can you measure the effectiveness on the tube? Or is that just part of the mix as a whole? Or can you see
we can through econometric models.
Okay.
And we can see some impact.
Yeah.
It's obviously hard to isolate. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a brand element in there as well
exactly.
Okay.
But we're now in 11 countries. So
11 European countries.
11 European countries.
So and then that's a big challenge as well, because you've got to have feet on the street in all those countries.
Yeah. So we're 500 people in the company now, in 11 countries, and we only have about 100 of them in the UK.
Yeah.
Right. So
So you really are a pan-European business.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's a very distributed company.
And why does the US come up, or did you have a debate about should you be in the US, or you just see actually we want to be a pan-European business?
The US comes up a lot.
Yeah.
We keep thinking about it and talking about it. I think we saw a big opportunity so we're the biggest in the world doing what we do. There's no one in the US who competes with us. We think the US is an interesting market, but we felt like there was work to do in terms of making sure we consolidated Europe first.
Because it's a harder, in many ways, I know you've got the size of the US market in the distance, but it's a harder route to go down to Europe because it's such a local product that consumers are purchasing. You can't all be English language, right? So each site has to be nationalized. The UX, I'm guessing, has to be tweaked a little bit for each country. And
the UX doesn't get tweaked much, but you're right. I mean, we can launch a new country within a couple of days. It's not now that part. But you're right. It's got to get translated, and it's got to get those things, and the laws are different, and you got to put the local people in the street. Yeah. But there is some complexity in that. Yeah. There's some cultural differences in what services people buy in each country. But the U.S. remains, probably the single largest market in this area, and we think there's a huge opportunity. But equally, we had one failed attempt early on in our history where we tried to go to the U.S. and it didn't succeed. Yeah. We were too early. The product wasn't ready. We made some big mistakes in how we did it. And I do it with. I want to do the U.S. the right way.
Yeah, do it properly.
And I think you have to be. I think in our market, it's not the U.S. is not one market. It's a city by city approach. Yeah. It's in fact it's neighborhood by neighborhood, and I think it would require a very big investment.
So you need deep pockets.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. So what next? What next for Treatwell?
So as I said, we're in 11 countries. Some of those markets we've seen huge growth. So 2 years ago we were only in the UK. 2 years ago we were 100 people in one country.
2 years you've gone from 100 to 500 and 1 to 11 countries.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you must have been a busy man over the past
really
2 years.
Busy, yeah.
It's a positive busy though. Yeah, it's a good.
We did a lot of that came organically. We did do 5 acquisitions of small businesses in that process. So there's some of that happened in the middle of it. There's been a lot of consolidation in that process. Yeah. We had 6 different brand names. We had to bring them together into one brand, which is why I had Treatwell. So we feel like
so that's the reason for rebranding.
Yeah. We feel that. I think we see just I think still feel like we're scratching the surface of what this opportunity.
So your vision of no phones and a pen and pencil and taking your booking you're like a small percentage of that journey.
I'm just at 2% of that journey, and I feel like there's so much more to do. We've entered a lot of countries which are still growing in early stage. Yeah. The UK market, which is our biggest market, is still grows at triple digits. So it's growing really, really quickly, and we think we have a huge opportunity. I think to build something great, and that excites me. I think the fact that you can. I think we're unusual. I think we're unusual in the sense. I'm very proud of what we're doing because I think, like your business. I mean, we're original. We're not trying to. We haven't copied anyone else.
You've been plowing your own furrow.
Yeah, and which for me as an entrepreneur is critical. I'm not interested in
sense of real self-satisfaction.
Exactly. Following someone else's tracks is just not the way I like to do things. And then the second thing I'm really proud of is now that we're a world leader out of Europe. And the second thing is I can't think of another European business that has dominant positions in virtually every single market it's in. Yeah. Right now, some of those are still early days, I admit, but we have a chance to build actually a business that dominates across all those 11 markets.
Yeah, that's rare.
And that's rare.
That's a real sense of pride. I can sense it.
Yeah. So I think there's lots of good stuff still to be done.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And tongue-in-cheek question to end, which is your favorite treatment that you guys serve up when you look at it?
I mean, I think
at the end of the day,
I think a massage is still my personal favorite, right? I'm not such a
business started. Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lopo, thank you very much for your time.
So
It's really great to chat. Amazing story. So thank you.